Hello, and today's topic will be about epistemic humility and intellectual humility and why they are needed in our lives. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tiffany, and I want to welcome you all to my channel. So, thank you for those who have been subscribing to my channel, hitting the notification bell, sharing, and checking out all the previous videos. And so, it's very important that we get on to the subject matter. And I happen to scrolled through my phone and looked up this subject called epistemic humility. And I was wondering what is that about? So I want to go ahead and get into it. I want to get into explain what epistemic humility is and intellectual humility and why they are necessary. So now let's get into the article, shall we? And I want to post up this article right here. So this article is from medium.com. It says epistemic humility and ancient path to wisdom. The best thing to know is that you know very little. All right. And it says Socrates may have been the father of Western philosophy, but he wasn't the august white marble figure we often imagine. He was, by most account, a strange and irritating man. Okay. It said he spent his life questioning the status quo and teaching his students, many of whom were children from rich families, to do the same. When he put on trial for his life at the age of 70, Socrates defended himself in his characteristic style, interrogating the people around him. Defending himself in court, Socrates acknowledged that he was an unpopular figure in Athens. In fact, he had irritated Athenian people so widely that the common author Astro what's it Astrophines? Yeah, Astrophines had written a whole play, The Clouds, mocking Socrates as an arrogant, nonsense spewing charlatan. Socrates had questioned Athenians' religious belief, educated some of the worst leaders in Athenian history, and generally made himself a pest. All right. Instead of acknowledging his reputation and apologizing, Socrates claimed that it was a virtue. He said that the Athenians had come to hate him because he had exposed their shortcomings. And it says, apparently speaking over cries of protest from the audience at his trial, Socrates said, Men of Athens, do not interrupt, but hear me. There was an agreement between us that you should hear me out. If you kill me, you will not easily find another like me, who, if I may use such a ludicrous figure of speech, am a sort of godfly given to the state by the god. That's right, Socrates thought of himself as godfly, more commonly known as a horsefly, whose bites drove Athenians crazy but kept them awake. Okay. So then it goes on to say that Socrates argued that he was providing a valuable service to Athenians by showing them just how ignorant they really were. He began by his defense by telling a story about his friends Serapion had asked the oracle to declare whether anyone was wiser than Socrates. So the oracle, apparently a fan of Socrates, said that there was no one wiser. So Socrates, rather than taking the oracle at her word, set out to prove her wrong. Okay. So he went on to the wisest people in town, politician, poet, and craftsman, and found that they all thought they understood far more than they really did. Socrates concluded that because he at least understood that he knew nothing, he was really the wisest man in Athens. So Socrates' speech in his defense Socrates' speech in defense of himself didn't work. In fact, it probably cemented the jury's impression of him as a grafting weirdo, but it showed that he was convinced, even when his life was in danger, that wisdom was really a form of epistemic humility. The idea that most important thing to know, perhaps the only thing you can be sure of, is that your mind will never fully grasp the world around it. All right. So Socrates wasn't the only person to believe that epistemic humility is the root of real wisdom. In ancient China, a few decades before Socrates, Lao Tzu established the core beliefs of Taoism using the very similar principles. The Tao Te Chang, a short book of belief, was it elliptical or elliptical sayings attributed to Lao Tzu's attempts to explain the Tao, the natural way or order of the universe, by not explaining it. So the Tao Te Ching makes it clear that we can never really understand the universe and that exhausting ourselves in pursuit of complete knowledge is a waste of time. It describes the Tao in deliberately paradoxical ways like this. The Tao that can be told is not the internal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The nameless in the beginning of heaven and earth. The name is the mother of 10,000 things, ever desireless. One can see the mystery, ever desiring. One can see the manifestation. These two spring from the same source, but different in name. This appears as darkness, darkness within darkness, the gate to all mystery. All right, so, and I'm just going to stop there. So basically, when you read a story about Socrates, right? Socrates was very arrogant and egotistical, and he thought that he can talk his way out of the situation at the trial to the Athenians people. However, they weren't really going for that. Even the judges wasn't going for it. And it was a comedian during that time period that wrote a comedy about him, making fun of him. So it took him a minute and he had to go amongst the people and he had to realize that he was not the wisest individual. He did not know everything. And he knew very little. And also, Lao Tzu, the founder of Taoism, also mentioned that everything in the universe is not going to be noticeable. All right. Everything in the universe, you're not going to know. So you're only going to get so much information. So check this out. Let's go back to the source real fast. He said the point of all of this, which may read like nonsense to other readers, to most readers, is to help Taoists realize that life's biggest questions are unanswerable. The best we can do is to know ourselves and not to waste our time and energy on pointless pursuits. And Lao Tzu's thinking the wisest person understands that he will never understand the universe. He encourages Taoists to live as life of action without action, in which they humbly go along with the universe, accepting that they will never fully understand it rather than trying to wrestle life under their control. It says, without looking out the window, one may observe the way of heaven. The further one goes, the less one knows. This is why the sage knows without moving, understands without seeing, succeeds without doing. So again, the whole purpose is realizing that you don't have the answer. You're not going to ever have an answer to everything. You're not going to have an answer. And so now let's go on to the next thing. All right. Let's go on to the concept about intellectual humility. Okay. So let's look at intellectual humility. Now watch this. And what does this say about intellectual humility? Intellectual humility is the acceptance that one's belief and opinion could be wrong. Other characteristics which may accompany intellectual humility include a low concern for status and acceptance of one's intellectual limitation. All right. Intellectual humility is often described as intellectual virtue. It is contrast with other perceived virtues and vices such as open-mindedness, intellectual courage, arrogance, vanity, and servility. It can be understood as lying between the extremes of intellectual arrogance, servility, or diffidence, and intellectual dogmatism and timidity. And to me, this all sounds familiar. All right. And here's the definition: why intellectual humility as an independent and focused area of study is a recent phenomenon. The presence of humility in discourse dates back many centuries. Okay. So it goes on to talk about Socrates as the ideal example of intellectual humility, studied by Adam Maslow, Carl Rogers, and Gordon Allport discuss humility with regards to one's knowledge without using the phrase intellectual humility. In 1990, Richard Paul presented intellectual humility as a critical thinking disposition interdependent with other traits such as intellectual courage. He defined as awareness of the limits of one's knowledge, including sensitivity to circumstances in which one's native egocentrism is likely to function self-deceptively, sensitivity to bias and prejudice in, and limitation of one's viewpoint. So Paul adds, it does not imply spinelessness or submissiveness. It implies that the lack of intellectual pretendingness, boastfulness, or conceited, combined with insight into the logical foundation or lack of such foundation of one's beliefs. In recent times, one of the first focused studies of intellectual humility was conducted by Roberts and Woods in 2003. A lot of the literature on intellectual humility is about attempting to frame definition. Conception of intellectual humility include proper belief, underestimation of strengths, low concern, limitation on it, and as well as semantic cluster of attitudes and confidence management. All right. What's up? Peace to the chat. What's going on? So that's intellectual humility. Okay. Now, I want to take you a step further before I start doing my talking. So now let's go into the concept about Erykah Badu. And yes, I've used her as an example before. Now, if you guys remember her first single, On and On, that was her very first single. And somewhere in the line, she put this quote out. Somewhere in this line, I'm going to show y'all. Erykah Badu puts up a quote and it says, the man that knows something knows that he knows nothing at all. The man that knows something knows that he knows nothing at all. That's very interesting. She said, the man that knows something knows that he knows nothing at all. What she was indicating in the song, that a man that can admit that he does not know anything is the wisest individual. Because a wise person will learn a lesson. They will learn a lesson in life. Let me show you this. Now over here it says genius annotation, right? This comes from genius.com, which is a website that deals with music, lyrics, and the meaning behind them. So wise men know that there is always more to learn. Only foolish men think they know it all. So Erykah is referring to Plato's Apology of Socrates, in which he quotes Greek philosopher Socrates' famous paradox. As for me, all I know is that I know nothing. And then here's the biblical quote. The Bible brings to light a similar idea in 1 Corinthians 8:2. And if any man think that he knoweth anything, he knoweth nothing yet as he ought to know. Right? So that's deep. So basically, the wisest person, excuse me, the wisest person is the one that doesn't know anything. Because that's how we start off. We start off not knowing nothing. We come into this world not knowing nothing. We come into this world not knowing anything, and we take our diligent time to learn as much as we can. All right, so let's go ahead and let's look at the next one. Now, right here, this here deals with African symbols, the adinkras. So the adinkras are Akan symbols, right? That was basically used for funerary tradition, mean, to honor those who have passed on and became an ancestor. They will have symbols to represent them, to represent what the foundation was, what the principle was, and etc. So one, the Adinkra symbol, which is the West African symbol, okay, is called the Nia Anum Nosua Ahu. Nia Anum Nosua Ahu. That means he who does not know can know from learning. So this symbol right here, and you can see the symbol on my thumbnail, right? That means the symbol of knowledge, lifelong education, and continued quest for knowledge. Again, symbol of knowledge, lifelong education, and continued quest for knowledge. All right. So again, the symbol is called Nia Anum No Sua Al Ohu. So it means he who does not know, no, he who does not know can know from learning. Okay. And that's the whole thing. So again, we all don't know. And we only know just by taking a journey through life. We take a journey through life just so we can be able to acquire information. All right. So right here, here's another article called theconversation.com. And under this article here, which is very interesting, it says, what Socrates knows nothing wisdom can teach a polarized America. And this came out April 25th of 2023. Okay. So it says a common complaint in America today is that politics and even society as a whole are broken. Critics point out endless lists of what should be fixed, the complexity of the tax code or immigration reform or the inefficiency of government. But each dilemma usually comes down to polarized deadlock between two competing visions and everyone's conviction that theirs is the right one. Perhaps this white-knuckled insistence on being right is the root cause of the societal fissure, why everything seems so irreparably wrong. As religion and philosophy scholars, we would argue that our apparent national impasse points to a lack of empathetic humility or intellectual humility, that is, an inability to acknowledge, empathize with, and ultimately compromise with opinions and perspective different from one's own. In other words, American have stopped listening. So why is intellectual humility in such scarce supply? Of course, the quickest answer might be the right one. That humility runs against most people's fear of being mistaken and the zero-sum view that being right means someone else has to be totally wrong. All right, it says, but we think that the problem is more complex and perhaps more interesting. We believe epistemic humility presents something of a twofold danger that makes being humble frightening and has ever since Socrates first put it at the heart of Western philosophy. Okay. All right, so now here it is, going further down. Paying the price. So the second danger of epistemic humility is now probably in view. It is the danger that Socrates faced when he was brought to trial for corrupting Athens' youth, the danger to the humble skeptics themselves. He is brought up on two very serious charges. The first was an accusation that he taught students to make the weaker argument appear to be stronger, which is actually what Sophists did, not Socrates. The second was that he had invented new gods. Again, he didn't do that. Poets and playwright did. What was he really guilty of? Perhaps only did Socrates criticize the arrogant self-assertion of his culture influencers, and they brought him to trial, which concluded in his death sentence. So Socrates taught that being humble about one's own view was a necessary step in searching for truth, perhaps the most essential one. That was and perhaps still is a revolutionary view because it forces us to challenge preconceived ideas about what we believe, what we worship and where we tell meaning. He placed himself in the middle of Athenians' sharply polarized debates about what truth and goodness were, and he was the one who got hit. So, Humility Like Darkness, wrote American philosopher Henry David Thoreau, reveals that heavenly lights. Put another way, humility about the verity, accuracy, and wisdom of one's ideal can reveal that the fact that others have understandable reasons for thinking as they do. As long as you try to see the world as they are seeing it, in contrast, arrogance tends to extinguish the heavenly light about what we still don't fully understand. So said, being humble about one's position in the world is not an invitation for a post-truth. Anything goes, opinion free for all. Truth is the idea of truth matters. And we can pursue it together if we are always open to being wrong. Mm, that's deep. So now I gave you those articles, okay, and put out those information. So now let's talk about this just for a little bit before I close it out. Why do we need epistemic humility and intellectual humility? Because we have to be honest with ourselves. Just because we study something for a long period of time does not mean that we have all the answers. There's many things that has to be discovered. Okay. And there's a lot of things that we have yet to discover. Even scientists has admit that they don't even know everything. They don't have all the answers. You have scientists that sit down with philosophers and they have conversation about things that is the unknown, right? And one of those conversations that is brought up is the concept of the idea of a creator, or what you call God or whatever, right? Because scientists don't really know everything, and they have a discussion, and then those discussions become debates, and the whole purpose of debate is not to outshine each other, see who know more than who, but who can bring influence to people, who can give more wisdom. What can't you learn from each other point of view? That's really the whole purpose of having a debate. Not saying who know more than who, but what can't you learn from each other? What can't you learn from the from your opponent? This is one of the reasons why I like Rogerian argument, because Rogerian argument, right, teaches you how to be more compassionate and be more understanding, as opposed of being very argumentative and antagonist. So Rogerian, which was started by Carl Rogers, he taught that one of the key element is to be able to have some form of sympathy and being able to understand your opponent. Your whole thing is not to just prove that they are wrong. It mean basically it's showing that you can have a agree to disagreement type of conversation or type of argument. That's the whole purpose. Agree to disagree. And that's the meaning of dealing with the Rogerian argument. And so that's the whole purpose of the debate. You're going to have agreement and you have a disagreement, right? But what did you learn from each other? What new information was available to you? So is it for the love of victory, or is it for the love of wisdom? Debate's supposed to be for the love of wisdom, not the love of victory. Not because, oh, you defeated this person, now it's over with, it's a done deal. You still got a long ways to go yourself. There's a lot of things that people think they know just because they read something, or just because they went to some event, right? But it's still a whole lot that you don't really know. It's a lot of things that has to be discovered. And we're not going to discover everything in our lifetime while we're here on this planet. You're not going to discover everything. You're not going to find out information to everything. So I don't care what your background may be. I don't care if you are a religious person, a non-religious person, if you're a Democrat, if you are a Republican, your ethnic background, your creed, whatever. I don't care. You're not going to know everything. You don't have an answer to everything. And that's why we have so much corruption and problem in the world, because everybody operate from the concept of egotism. And that once you got the ego standing in the way, then everything else is blocked. because everybody think they have the answer to everyone's problems. Everybody think they have the answer to everything. Everybody think that everybody's going to see the world in one dimension. Going back to the concept of, was it phenomenology? Phenomenology, right? Which deals with the study of one's experience in life or how people view their understanding. So we got subjective reality and we have the objective reality. Subjective reality is based on what a person, based on one's experience. So you got two individuals, you can have multiple individuals that have went through the same path or walked that same path in life, but had different outcomes. So if they walked the same path and they had different outcomes, that's where the subjective reality come into place. But the objective reality is the reality of all things. And it factors out the subjective reality, right? So we know the objective reality is we all gotta die. We all gonna die. We all gonna leave this planet. We ain't gonna be here forever. We ain't gonna be here forever. That's the objective reality. We all going to die. But subjective reality is, okay, well, what's the outcome? Now here's your chance. Here's your probability. Life itself is a probability. Because life is based on chance. So think of it as playing a game of dice, as a game of CeeLo. When you play the game of dice or you play the game of CeeLo, right? You're looking at where's your probability of chance that you are going to win or you're going to lose. So while we here, we living by chance. And we also got to realize that we know that life is the beginning of death. But that's a whole nother conversation in itself. So the key element is you're not gonna know everything. And then you may come to an age where you end up having a disease such as dementia or Alzheimer's. You might have a disease such as Alzheimer's to where you may not remember anything at all. You may not even know where you at. And your memory can be retrospective, meaning that it can go back into time of your childhood. And what's normally happening is that part of your brain is decreasing itself. It's like it's eating itself up. So your brain is deteriorating. So once your brain deteriorates, that's pretty much nothing left for you. So you don't know when you're going to end up having dementia or Alzheimer's. You never know. So what we have to do as people, as humanity, as a whole, period, regardless of what ethnic group we come from, what our religious background, affiliation, or whatever, we all must admit that we do not have the answer to everything in life. We don't have the answer to nature. And nature don't have to owe us any answer. Nature does not have to give us any type of explanation. We just live through it. And we just breathe through it. It don't owe us any explanation. We are here because of nature. Because of the natural phenomenon. That's why we're here. Just like scientists don't even know the answer about the universe. They still trying to figure out, well, how long the universe has been here. Is there a dark matter? Is there a Big Bang theory? To be honest with you, you're not going to know the answer today. Some scientists say there is a Big Bang theory, and some scientists say nah. They don't agree on everything. But we don't know what's going on in the universe or outside the universe. We don't know that. We don't know how everything is operating. But we know that we live inside the earth. And one only thing we can know is how to be better humans. And know thyself. Gain the knowledge of self. And half of us ain't even mastered the knowledge of self, if you want to be technically honest. Because basically what Carl Jung spoke on when it came to the knowledge of self, He was basically saying the knowledge of self that we know is based on our egos. The knowledge of self that we know is based on our egos, not based on the internal work. So that means people put on an image and say, this is who I am. But the inner part of you is where the work is really needed to be at. That's where the shadow work comes in, because now you got to look at the multiple parts of you. And that part of you that you don't pay attention to is the one that you're not acknowledging. So therefore, how can we really know everything when we really don't know ourselves? And it's very common, especially in the Black community. We definitely don't know ourselves. Because if we did, there wouldn't be so many identity crises going on, right? That's something that we got to check ourselves on. How do we have the answer to everything if we really don't know ourselves? Now, there are things that can be proven to be factual, and there's some things that cannot be proven. But if it wasn't for trial and errors, if it wasn't for a possibility, we wouldn't be knowing this stuff. We wouldn't even have a clue. But anyways, that's all I wanted to say, you guys. I thank you all for sitting here watching and listening to my video, or tune into my video rather, and listen to what I have to say. So just keep in mind, epistemic humility and intellectual humility is needed. They are needed in our lives. So the moment we think that we got the answer to everything, that's when we have to fall back and just realize that no, we don't. We only here because if we did, we would not be here. We have no reason to be here if we knew everything. You're here to live, to learn, and die. You live to learn, and you learn to live, and you live to die. That's just a cycle of life. All right, then. Until next time, peace and power and elevation. Thank you guys for watching. This your girl Tiffany, and I will come back with some more videos and some more subject matters. But thank you for tuning in. Make sure you like the channel, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. Thank y'all so much. All right. Peace.